Are you ready?
Three, two, one, go.
Okay, hey Jason, how are you doing? I hope you had a good night. We talked yesterday. That was good. That was a wonderful talk. Actually, we've been talking quite a lot recently, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
You miss me too much.
Just kind of.
Yeah, it's been nice. It's been nice.
Mm.
Spotify has been doing kinda okay. I've been seeing a bunch of views
That's good. That's good.
from our side.
Uh-huh.
It's actually in the plus in terms of how many listeners we're getting, like percentages.
Mm.
So that's
Mm.
nice to see.
Mm.
Um, Besides that, it's just been like the usual. Nothing much is
Working hard.
changing.
Yeah, yeah,
Nothing
yeah,
much is changing.
yeah,
Well, I would hope that we're getting better at what we're doing. You know,
yeah, yeah.
there's clear
Yeah.
there's clear you can see some clear progress though. So that's always good.
Yeah. I mean, like we're getting more listeners. We're out on Spotify now. We actually have themes that we're working on instead of just random conversations. So I think that's growth. I would say that's growth.
Yep.
Yeah. Mm.
That is growth.
Mm.
And let's start by going into a request we got from one listener out there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Your friend Oscar. She said she
Mm-hmm.
wanted us, or she kind of expected our conversation to go into light and darkness. Um,
Okay. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
so light and darkness as a concept. So we'll just go into it very quickly, right? Light and darkness as a concept. What does that mean, really? What does that mean to you? What's the first thing that comes to your mind?
Nighttime and daytime. Nighttime and
Nighttime and
daytime.
daytime.
Yes. I believe the concept of light and darkness comes from the fact that as human beings we're diurnal creatures. We do not live in the night. The night scares us. The night causes thoughts and imaginations of monsters and demons, right?
Yep.
So we hide in our caves and now in our houses to protect ourselves from the night because we don't know what's out there in the darkness.
I think.
And as dawn comes, as the sun rises, we feel safe, and the sun is God. And in many religions, the sun has been worshipped.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting that I think it stems from our great ancestor. I forgot the name, but like we all stem from this. Like all mammals stem from this small animal.
Mm-hmm.
This animal that survived through the extinction level event that killed off the dinosaurs,
Like it was a shrew, right? Like a
like a
shrew.
shrew or something like that, right?
Yeah.
And a lot of our biological, like base biological, like instincts today still work or are the
Mm-hmm.
same as most mammals, right? And
Yeah.
if you really think about it, it's like it would make sense that that tiny shrew would be scared at night, right? Because
Yep.
it was almost like it was bigger than a mouse or a rat, but it was still kind of small, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
you can imagine all kinds of predators who are like stalking it at night. It probably needs to curl up in some hole or some you know cave or some tree somewhere just to stay safe.
Yeah.
And even though we evolved from that and we became bigger and smarter animals, there were still things like lions and tigers in the dark, right? So
Yeah. Exactly.
you can
Exactly.
imagine like our ancestors were still like we all like okay, at night you do not go across this line, right? Everyone stays by the campfire and we all stick
Exactly.
together.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so I guess we just took that concept and we turned them into symbols, right? Darkness being
Exactly.
this
Yeah.
unknowable thing where all our fears and potentially also um where our fears are at for sure, but potentially also where the future's at, right?
Yeah. It's
Usually,
true. Yeah. Like the darkness. You're very right. The darkness defines everything that is not known, right?
yes,
And
yes, yes, yes.
because it is not known, we tend to associate that darkness with chaos. But the thing
Chaos.
about things you don't know is that the things you don't know are what could lead you to heaven, right?
Yep.
So sometimes your search for paradise, your search for a good life, can only be found in what is in the unknown.
And uh, like similar to entropy, I think
Mm.
if you're trying to live a good life, you
Mm.
there'll be more chaos around you that you're putting into order. So that
Exactly.
darkness slowly gets like smaller and smaller as your field of competency gets bigger and bigger, right? And you just start to see like a face or something that used to scare you in the darkness becomes a welcoming smile, you know? It'll be-
Exactly. Yes.
There's a difference between you being scared of that beautiful woman you're seeing every day, thinking, oh my god, she doesn't even know what I exist. And suddenly, a few months later, after you said hi, you guys are getting married, right?
Yeah.
That's literally like, she was once an unknown, and now she's like a part of your life. She's literally, you know, with you.
The darkness is now your guiding light, you know?
Yeah. So, some things that scare you in the dark become very welcoming when you shine a light on them. So,
So in this sense, is God the light or the dark, or is God both?
I think God is supposed to be both.
God is both. Yeah, God is both, right?
Yeah. I believe he created, he is both creation and destruction, right? So I do think he represents the dark and the light.
I think the Hindus explain this very well with the goddess Shiva, right? Yeah, Shiva is Shiva is the third god of a Hindu triumvirate, you know? Like, we think about Catholicism, we think of God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. So Shiva is like the third god in that. And the triumvirate consists of three gods who are responsible for creation, upkeep, and destruction, right? So all these three gods, they're kind of one thing, you know? It's Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. They're supposed to be one thing, but it's like individual aspects of this thing are responsible for various aspects of existence. Creation, upkeep, and destruction. But in order to create, if you create, you must manage, you must upkeep. So Brahma creates, Vishnu preserves, and Vishnu destroys.
Shiva.
Yeah, sorry, Shiva destroys. Yes.
Okay. I actually know nothing about Hinduism.
Oh man, a couple of years back, I was just deep into Hinduism and just reading all these books.
I should definitely read something about their mythology.
Quite interesting. Like, if you just, the first book to get is just, you know, the famous book. What is it called? Bhagavad-Gita. It's a book you have to read over and over again. It's a very small book, very small. Like, I think just a little over 100 pages, I think.
Oh, okay. That is a very small book.
And it comes off at like sort of poetry. Not really poetry, but it's like what do I want to call it? Yeah, poetry. What's this type of poetry called? Oh, I forgot the name. Anyway, it's kind of like poetry, and it's very short. But I think it's something you have to read over and over again to kind of get the point. And some of the there are not really many historical facts, I guess, but it's an interesting story. It's interesting.
Okay.
Yeah.
Send it to me later. I'll take a look at it.
Yeah, will do.
You know what's really interesting is that we applied this light and darkness to almost, again, it became symbols. It applied to almost everything that we see in our daily lives. I think the most interesting example is the idea of colored skin, right? White being light and dark skin being darkness.
What do you mean?
Black people. Black people are darkness and white people are light.
In what sense exactly?
In what sense? Okay, to break that down, we need to even go a bit further into like light and darkness. Somewhere along the line, light became in colors, right? Representation. Light became white and darkness became black, right? Which innately makes sense, I guess, right? You don't need to think about why somewhere along the line someone decided, okay, this makes sense. Light should be white and this should be black, right? But to go even deeper into that, white became the representation of good, and black became the representation of black. I mean, of bad and evil, right? Which I guess maybe is not the best way to look at it, because like what you said, it's more like order and chaos than good and evil. and you need both. You need both order and chaos in order to like live properly in the world. But people have been thinking it as like good and evil, and when you take that idea and apply it to like the color of one's skin, suddenly you look at black people and you think black people are like monsters, devils, demons. Dark skin, they're black.
So with this, I would wonder whether this was the case prior to the advent of Christianity. It has always been this way, because I imagine I was reading some books on Roman history, and during the Roman times, you see they had a lot of like interactions with people of African descent,
and it didn't seem like they mattered. It didn't seem like it cared to them. Yeah.
And even like, there's this documentary we're watching about the history of slavery, where they're talking about like Lisbon, the capital of Portugal, in the 1500s, I believe, whereby like black people could go as slaves and end up becoming aristocrats. So is this really a religious thing, or was just that a modern thing caused by slavery? Especially not just slavery, but how slavery evolved in the Americas.
I think it's almost like propaganda. They probably used it to make it easier for the public to accept the idea of like enslaving a whole race of people, because without ideas like this, how do you justify it, right? You're literally kidnapping people from their homeland and making them into slaves. It's like somewhere along there you go like, oh no, actually don't worry, we're good, because these aren't people, these are animals, they're just in the form of people. It's like, look at their skin, they don't even talk the same language we do, they're godless people, who cares? Yeah, you have to sort of make justifications like that, because the public will over time, the public will start to really think about it and go like, what we're doing is kind of fucked up, don't you think? Right?
Yeah, I agree.
Well, that's what happened in Iraq, right? Like, the U.S. altercation, or not U.S. altercation, it's more of like a straight up invasion of Iraq on the pretense that there was weapons of mass destruction. In the beginning, everyone was like, yeah, fuck these guys, we're going in, we're going to kill the bad guys, right? And then after a long-term occupation, especially with the failed attempts to create like democracy, in Iraq, to bring democracy and justice to Iraq, right? People, the time allowed people to start to think about what they're doing, actually doing there, sending all of their young men over there to do what, and then like as things unfolded, like they figured out there's actually no weapons of mass destruction. Everyone started getting really angry, right? Because it was just like, we're sending our young people over there to like die for no real good reason, right? So again, like just using it as propaganda to enslave people.
Okay. Yeah.
I think actually you should just leave it at that, because our next topic that we haven't talked about so much is spirituality.
Yes. We have 2 episodes talk about this now. We've talked about religion for 2 weeks, 3 weeks actually, 3 episodes. Or has it been 3 or 2? I'm not quite sure. So now we go into spirituality.
What does it mean to be spiritual? What is spirituality? What does it mean to be spiritual?
That's so. I'm reading. I've been reading this book it's an autobiography of Carl Jung.
Carl Jung. Okay.
Yeah. So Carl Jung was talking about how his father was very religious, and he did not question what the church told him, and did not want to think about what the church said. He wanted to accept and believe that's the way the world is, and that should not be questioned, right? And Carl Jung goes to say that when he was a child, he had some spiritual experiences, and he believed those spiritual experiences were God talking to him, or rather, he was experiencing God in a sense, right? But he knew whatever he was experiencing was so far removed from what his father tried to explain when he was talking about God and religion, So when we talk about spirituality, I think to be spiritual means to have access to God. If I'm going to use this, so I will say It's being spiritual does not mean you're religious, and being religious does not mean you're spiritual.
So
I think the two they're not the same thing. They're not the same thing.
I think they kinda, well, it depends. But in most cases, being religious means you're spiritual.
In most cases?
Yeah, I'd say most
in
cases.
most cases. Why do you say that?
Because after looking at it a bit, I was just like, being spirituality is actually, it's just the idea of believing in something bigger than yourself, really. It's
okay.
Like, even you believing that Mother Nature is watching out for you, that means you're spiritual, actually. It's as simple as that.
Okay,
so I'm like, I know we talked about that being God and stuff like that. Yeah, sure, we can use that definition of God, sure. So like, as long as you believe in a God-like figure or some sort of entity that is watching over you, or something that you can devote yourself towards, then you're spiritual.
Well, but I'm going to make the argument that sometimes people are religious because it's a societal requirement, you know? Like, if you live in a society where everyone goes to church every Sunday, you don't want to be the guy who says, no, I don't go to church because I don't believe in that. And if you go to church and you're eating the communion and you're praying like everyone else, no, you're not praying, you're just closing your eyes and to pray. Eventually, the routine becomes a part of your life, which makes you, to a degree, religious. You're performing the rituals, right? There's no way I can speak Japanese, look Japanese, have a Japanese name, and not say to some sense I'm Japanese, right? Yeah. So I say religion and spiritual are not the same. You can be religious and not be spiritual. So the person who's going to church every day, every Sunday,
I agree. I was just saying, in most cases, I think most people are, though. Most people are. The people who are religious, in most cases, they are spiritual too. Like, removing the cases with, like, of kids, because kids aren't really thinking about it that much. Like you said, kids don't really have that brain capacity to really, not even brain capacity, they don't have the time, you know? Being around for like 8 years in this world, 7 years, you don't really think about, is this religion right for me? Like, an 8-year-old isn't thinking about that shit, right? So let's talk about people like in the, like, 18-year-olds, 20-something-year-olds, you know? Once they've had enough time to really think about religion and spirituality, the topic of religion and spirituality.
Let me say this. I think philosophizing of religion and spirituality does not make you religious or spiritual, right?
Yeah.
Now, a kid can have a religious or a spiritual experience. The only thing they lack is the words to express what they have experienced, right?
Also, people wouldn't take them seriously because they don't have that life experience.
So a kid can be more spiritual than an 80-year-old man.
A kid can be more spiritual?
Yes, more spiritual than an older man or an older woman or just an older person, right?
What does more spiritual mean in this case?
In this case, I'm talking about the experience of feeling like you're one with nature.
Or whatever that they are.
Like kids. Okay. Kids are spiritual, right? Because what is spirituality other than being one with the universe, right? When kids play with animals, you know, as an adult, right? When I look at a dog and I pet a dog, I pet a dog with the notion in the back of my head that I am superior to this animal.
Really?
Yeah. Don't you think you're better than dogs? Is there no place in your mind that you believe, yeah, this dog can't do math? You know.
Hence, you know what I mean? Of better than it? I don't know, but
maybe, yeah. But to be fair, I will never feel that a dog is better than me. It can run faster than me, sure.
Sure. I agree.
Yeah, there's no way I can ever feel a dog is better. I always feel like I'm better than an animal.
I wouldn't feel like I'm better than a dog necessarily. Like, it's such a weird thing to say. It's like saying I'm better than a shark, you know, or saying a shark is better than a bird. Does that comparison really make sense? It's like they're two different, totally different animals, you know.
It doesn't. But what the point I'm trying to make here is this: that as an adult, when I deal with animals, I deal with them from a place of superiority, right?
I think
The,
that's
the
true.
dog
Most people.
is my pet. The
Yes,
dog
yes,
is
yes,
my
yes,
pet.
yes,
You know?
yes, yes, yes,
The
yes.
cat is my pet. You know?
Mhm.
But when a kid is dealing with animals, they not think of it as from a place of superiority.
I think they think
Right?
of it as a partner, as a buddy,
Exactly.
as an equal.
It's
maybe.
one of them. When kids go and play in the park and they're rolling in the grass, it's like they're experiencing the grass. They're being one with the grass. And that in of itself is a spiritual experience. We as adults will call it a spiritual experience. We call it playing. We call it petting a dog. But the kid, in a degree, is communicating with the animal. Maybe not in the scientific definition of communication, but the kid is communicating with the dog, right? You and I wouldn't do that. I'm like, okay, it's a dog. It wants food, it wants water, it wants to go for a walk. That's all I think.
Okay.
Yeah, but the kid isn't thinking like that. The kid is trying to interact with the dog, in a on a level playing field, right?
Mm-hmm.
That is a spiritual experience. Now, as adults, we lose that because of categorization. We are told human, animal, right?
Also, I've added, I feel like the level of symbolism that our brains work at, like we keep on adding layers of symbolism, and the symbols also get colored by experiences too.
Yes.
So there's just so much there in our minds. We can't be in the moment, like the same way kids.
Exactly. And what do most religions speak about here? Most religions talk about accepting the moment, being in the moment, right? What is enlightenment? When you talk about Buddhism or Hinduism, it's being in the moment. And what human being is in the moment more than a kid? Kids are always in the moment.
Because they have nothing else in their mind.
Exactly.
Nothing in their mind's eye.
Yeah. And so is that spirituality?
Yeah, I guess so. But
like even the Bible, right? The Bible talks like you can only enter the kingdom of heaven when you become like a child.
Oh yeah, there's a quote like that.
Exactly. So that means the kids are the most spiritual. As adults, there's the symbolism, the categorization.
Actually, this really makes a lot of sense because I don't know if it was Carl Jung, but one of the big philosophers, a psychologist, said that one of the main journeys, one of the main obstacles once you fully become an adult is to go back and rediscover the child that got left behind.
Yes. Yeah, I think that was Carl Jung. Yeah.
And I think that's part of it, rediscovering that oneness and the wonder that you lost in the pursuit of like living as a proper citizen in society. Because when you live in a proper citizen in society, you sort of get hammered into one specific hole, right? Specialization, right? Like you go from university, you have to work in a very specific job. In that specific job, you rise to a very specific position. In that position, you have to do something very nicely to like rise above everyone else, you know, above all the other competition. So you get hammered into this one field that you, granted, you might become very good at, and society says, oh, this person is providing a lot of service, let's pay them a lot of money. But you feel, I think there's some part of us after a while, even being very good in one field, that feels like trapped.
Of course.
So now you have to go back and just rediscover your passions, you know, rediscover like what does it mean to be here, you know? Because maybe you've been trapped in that cycle of like, oh, I'm just this big businessman. I do business things every day. At some point, you'll just go like, it's usually when your mortality starts creeping up, right? When you go like, wait, what have I been doing? You know, is there like a real meaning to all of this? You know.
Now, when you say that, I would like to make the comparison to religion. I would say that is religion, doing the same thing over and over again, and eventually you no longer see the point in what you're doing. You know. Catholics taking communion every other Sunday. I don't think every Catholic that takes communion is thinking, oh, this is the body of Christ. Some, I will even argue most, are just doing it because this is what I do on Sunday.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, spirituality will be to take that communion and to truly believe and to accept this is the body of Christ. I think that's spirituality. I think, from my point of view, religion is just to do it because it's what you do on that given day. Like to be the guy rising up the ranks in a company, like doing this, having this one job or working for this one company for several years. That company is now your religion. The expectations of that company are your religious ideals, you know?
Yeah. To a certain extent, I do agree. Yeah.
Spirituality is different. Spirituality is going and seeking your passion, you know? That's spirituality.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then the next question is, what does it mean to have a soul? What is a soul? And do you need
what is a soul?
And do you need spirituality? Do you need a soul to be spiritual?
Is a soul consciousness? Is that what it means to have a soul? To be conscious, to be aware?
That's the way I interpret it. I don't think a soul is necessarily like a physical thing. I think it's more of a construct that we made to describe our consciousness. The very core of your being. The very core of your being is your soul.
But now, when you talk about the core of your being, you know, like, what is the core of your being? What does that mean?
I think it's just a bunch of like.
It's a bunch the core of your being. It's your experiences. Like
experiences.
Actually, there is no core. There is no core. There is no core. There is no soul. Actually, there is no soul.
It's just
consciousness. It's just consciousness. And in this sense, consciousness is just everything. Is the amalgamation of your experiences and your biology, right?
I think it's just something we use to describe consciousness.
Yes, and even so the human brain has allowed us to learn from experiences in our lives, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the experiences you have are also influenced by the biology you have. For instance, if you're born with a limp, if you always have a limp, there are certain experiences you will be forced to have that will tend to govern the person you will eventually be, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like imagine just imagine a guy who's like born with all the testosterone, right? He grows up to be like 6'5", he's muscular, he has a perfectly square jaw. There's a way that person's life will turn out that everyone that isn't him cannot imagine, right?
Yep, that is true.
So is it that he has a soul, or this body that allowed for these experiences to happen that led him to be like this?
The soul itself can't be. Again, I'm not saying the soul is like its own thing. It is part of. It is consciousness. It is consciousness. When people talk about the soul, they talk about consciousness. So.
Okay, so when I think about this, your soul is okay. I'm just going to use soul. I'm not saying there's a soul. I'm going to use that term. Mm-hmm. Your soul, if it is a thing, your soul is a cup, and from the time you're born, things are being poured into that cup, like a drop of happiness here, two cups of trauma, you know,
on the premise,
3 cups of love.
You're on the premise that the soul can change over time, if the soul is a thing.
But it does change, or rather not change, it is influenced. It is influenced, right?
The soul
it is something that
influenced. Okay.
It's something, I think.
Okay, I guess it does make sense, because if we're going to use religions as context, in many religions, your soul, depending on your actions, can be elevated towards enlightenment or be damned into hell, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there is some sort of influence that you can place. There is influence that can be placed on the soul itself, right? There's the idea of like a damned soul, a soul that is like a black soul, right?
Yeah, and I would like to. Yeah, so the soul is ultimately the vessel that takes in all the influence, all the external influence. That is the soul.
Okay, the core of your being.
The core of your being, and that it's not a thing that can be changed, because I think its job is just to be influenced. The job of the soul is to be influenced.
So when you say change, I don't even know. When you say change, do you mean like can it
No, I
change
don't
its
say
nature?
no. I'm not saying change. I mean influenced. Influence. No, no. I'm taking away that word changed. I'm no
Okay.
longer using that word.
Okay.
So the purpose of the soul is simply to be influenced. So there is no such thing as finding your real self. Where is your real self? Your real
You.
self is just all the experiences you've had.
Yep. You're constantly
Yeah.
changing.
Yes. So
You.
there is no static real self. So when you talk about Hindus and Buddhists talk about the idea that your real self, like the core of your being, is the thing that is aware of all the experiences.
Yes. Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So the core of your being is simply awareness, according to Buddhists and Hindus and some other religions. I don't know all of them. So if that is the case, then there is no such thing as you and me. There is no such thing as me and the laptop in front of me. It's all just one thing. But as I speak to you right now, it's very hard for me to accept that, because I feel like I'm Oscar's talking to Jayson, you know?
As in, not one physical thing.
Not one physical. Yeah, like even like, what do you mean one physical? Like, so this is the argument.
Because there's
Buddhists will make.
definitely something. This is a physical world.
Yeah, so like
And
this is the
Buddhism
argument.
doesn't even like, and a lot of religions don't deny that there's a physical world. It's more of like the physical world is part of something bigger.
Okay, so I'm going to make a counter to that. The Buddhists will ask you this question: when does your skin begin? Where does your body end and the world begin? The Buddhists will ask you that question.
The point in which I feel pain, I feel the ground.
Exactly.
Under
So
my
now
feet.
the Buddhists will again ask you this: is it Jayson feeling? So what's feeling this? What's feeling the ground? What's feeling the ground? Right? The Buddhists also ask you, I think it's the Nepalese Buddhists who will ask you, like during meditation, to try to find your head. Try and look around and try and find your head.
There has to be something to break away from in order to like discover that hidden part of ourselves that is the observer, right?
Exactly. That's what the Buddhists say.
For the whole premise, like they have to accept that there is some sort of world to break away from, and that is the physical world, right?
The Hindus and the Buddhists as well call this Maya. The illusion that you think everything is separate. Right? Because they do believe everything is one thing. And to be enlightened, to be awakened, is to see everything as one. To break away from Maya, the illusion that everything is separate.
Which I can kind of understand. Because I mean, like, you're not really.
We're talking about.
You're not really separated in any real sense from everything else.
Yeah, we're not separated, right? So it goes back to the idea of categorization, which is a consequence of human language, right?
Language. Actually, I think what influenced what? Our actions and our culture influenced the language. I think it's the culture that came up. We just decided one day that people can own things. The minute people started owning things, it's like, okay, now we have to put labels and everything. And the minute we started putting labels and everything, it's like, okay, our language has to be updated. I think customs come first and the language and even stories come next.
I agree with that.
So someone somewhere along the way just decided, yeah, I own this. The sky is that big blue thing in the sky. I don't think anyone can own that. So we're making a rule on that. You know, just labels, working together as groups are just making labels everywhere, you know? And it's like, it's like a kid with a tape gun, you know?
Yeah.
But then one of the tags, the name tags guns, and they're just going around. This is the sky. This is mine, you know. This animal right here, it belongs to us, you know. This is our country right here. Let's draw these borders. And that's just the way we've been living. That's how our civilizations have worked for a lot of history, you know. There's only just been a very few like groups of people who have like nomad type cultures that haven't really tried to own things. they've just gone around and live off of whatever they can find, you know?
Yeah, you can't own much. You're always moving around.
Yeah,
Hunter-
and
yeah,
like
that-
the
hunter
idea of
gatherers, right?
ownership, yeah, the idea of ownership in those societies is very like you said, it doesn't make sense. So the idea of ownership just doesn't exist. It's not as strong as, let's say, capitalism.
Yeah.
Capitalism, it's like ownership is everything, right?
Yeah, capitalism can only work if people want to own things.
And if you really take capitalism to its like final conclusion, everything has a price tag, really.
Mm-hmm.
Everything has a price tag. If you have the money, it can probably be bought, right?
Yep.
You can buy love, you can buy your social
No,
rank.
I don't think you can buy love. You can buy affection.
You can buy affection. You can Oscar, you can buy love. You can buy love.
No, I mean, because like, okay, so what does the love mean here? What
I'm
does love
like,
mean here?
if you're the richest man in the world, Oscar, I'm telling you, girls will be willing to love you. They'll find ways to love you, you know? Obviously, people will argue that isn't real love, right? But it's like, it might turn into love.
Yeah, like I feel like love only works if someone is totally vulnerable with you and you're vulnerable with them. So I don't think. So I would say you can buy affection with money. I don't.
Okay, you can buy
man,
affection.
I think it's very hard to love another human being completely. The only thing you can love completely is like loving your child, but because it's. Yeah, that's it. That's how it works. But loving another human being, I don't think you can truly love another human being.
Okay, that's also another interesting question. But
Yeah.
point is that almost everything has a name tag.
Yeah.
In a
Oh,
capitalist.
yeah. No, name tag, a price. Oh, a price tag.
Sorry, a
maybe
price tag. Price tag,
Yeah.
sorry. I meant price tag. Everything has a price, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And our language gets ever more complex, I think, with ownership. And we need to create even more rules, you know? Look at the kinds of things that we have to do in our financial sector, like with stocks and like stock evaluations. Like, look at how complex that world is, you know? So, yeah. Can you be spiritual without a soul?
So I think this conversation, like what you've just been saying in the last few minutes, has maybe changed everything about what I feel. I feel like spirituality is just a name.
It's a name?
Yeah. It's the language, right? It's the language based off of our experiences, based off of our experiences as human beings, right? And this name spirituality is used to wait. So the names, can you be spiritual without a soul? The soul is an amalgamation of your experiences, right? The soul is what is influenced by your experiences. It is not possible to be spiritual if you do not have influence, if you do not have experience. So of course everyone, okay, so in this case maybe everyone is spiritual. So yeah, can you be spiritual without soul? We all have souls. We all have souls.
If we accept that the soul is the consciousness, right? There's the part of consciousness that we call the soul.
Yes, of course, we all have souls. So it's not possible to be spiritual without a soul. And what doesn't have a soul? A cockroach? I don't know.
Well, we don't know if it has one. It's just like the thing is
Yeah,
that
but
we can't say for sure that it doesn't have one.
But I think they've done
maybe it's just the way we
research on like consciousness.
And
according to the scientists, they define consciousness. I don't think cockroaches and some insects have consciousness.
Do animals have consciousness?
Yes.
Animals have consciousness.
Dogs have consciousness. Cows have consciousness. Pigs have consciousness.
Okay. They do. Most animals, okay, so it seems like with mammals and birds and other creatures, so it's not like they've been able to discover it in all animals quite yet, but there is evidence to say that animals do have some level of consciousness.
Yeah, then also, what is the definition of consciousness?
I think this consciousness is like, it's the one that's based on brain activity, self-awareness, etc., etc. I'm not too sure.
I'm looking at the basic definition of the word consciousness, and it's the state of being aware of and responsive to one's surroundings. If that is the case, then all living things are conscious.
Yes, if that is the definition, then. If that is the definition, then yes. Because you need to be able to be aware of your surroundings in order to survive. You know? Animals that aren't aware just die. Right? A predator will get them. Or they'll get sick. Or maybe they won't be able to find food. To some extent, then all animals... You're right. Or to some extent, then all animals are consciousness. If that's the definition we're working from. This is actually very interesting. It's worth looking into a bit more. But going back to, okay, the soul. Can you be spiritual without a soul? You say you can't.
You can't, because what doesn't have a soul? That's the question. First of all, prior to asking, can you be spiritual without a soul? The question should be, what doesn't have a soul? Then we observe that. Then we observe that entity and decide whether it can be spiritual or not.
So the soul is part of the equation?
The soul is part of the equation.
In order to be spiritual.
Yeah, because like, even if we look at religion, right? What happens when you die? Your soul either goes to heaven or hell, right?
Right.
So if there is no...
You'll need to find me a being that is not conscious and spiritual. That would be quite an interesting find, you know?
Exactly.
So until we find that, then I'll definitely say that you probably need a soul in order to be spiritual. And then we've talked about this quite a bit. I think leading up to like the last couple of questions is like, so is there a life after this one? Where does your soul go after you die?
Your soul goes nowhere.
Oh, there's some religious people who probably got really upset when you said that.
Yeah. So last week we talked about death, right? Like we did talk about death.
We talked about death once or twice.
Yeah. And I was thinking about like what I said, and I was trying to edit my thoughts on that. So what I came up with while I was thinking, just thinking, writing about my thoughts. And so think about this, like when you die, what we call death is like when your heart stops to beat, right?
Your physical death is what we usually refer to. Yeah.
However, when you die, when you're buried, like your biological matter goes into the soil. It becomes food for worms, bacteria, and other organisms, right? So the cells that make up you turn into cells that become something else, right? So your physical being actually never ceases to be. It just moves from one state to another, right?
If you're talking about in terms of energy, then yes, that is true.
Yes, it just moves from one state to another. And so we can talk about so maybe someone will say, okay, but what about your experiences, right?
Yeah, what happens to my memories? What happens to my personality? Yes. What happens to consciousness?
So now, your relations, your ambitions, your resentments, your joys, right? These things, they end when you die, right? Of course.
Do they?
However, they don't really end, right? Because if you had a feud with someone, right? Like imagine like those two families in America, the famous families, had feuds with the McCoys, right?
Yeah.
They had a feud for generations, right? So it all started with two people, right? So even if those two people died, the feud was still left to exist in this physical world, right? Or your ambitions. Steve Jobs died, but Apple is still a thing. It's not like Apple died with Steve Jobs, right?
In that way, there have been there's things that you can do to immortalize yourself.
So I think we all become immortal to some degree. No one really dies. The only thing that really
I'm pretty sure there's people who cannot be remembered at this point, and those people have suffered the true death.
No, not okay. So it's not about being remembered. It is not about being the individual being remembered. It's aspects of that individual carrying on. It's not about Jayson Oscar to be remembered eternally, right?
I'm pretty sure there's
aspects of Jayson Oscar. Like think about this, right? I'm sure there's something there's a piece of information that you carry with you today, and you're not aware where this information came from, right? That information probably came from someone who died centuries ago. But you're carrying that information with you today without knowing who was the father who came up with this thing, right?
How about the people who haven't had the chance to really involve themselves with anybody and they die? What happens to those?
They had family, right? They had family, I assume. They had a father, they had a mother, they had siblings, they had cousins. They did interact with someone to some degree, right? Unless they were locked up from birth to death.
Okay.
Yeah, so my point here is that we don't really die. The only thing that dies upon what we call our physical death is our attachment to these things. That's the only thing that truly goes. Your attachment to your family, your attachment to your job, your attachment to your resentments and your fears. That's the only thing that ceases to be when we have a physical death. So what happens after you die? Nothing happens to you personally when you die. Because whatever you were is left here when you die.
Not everything. You've explained that some part of you gets left behind. But now we're talking about the parts that don't get left behind.
What doesn't get you left behind? Your body is still in the ground. Your body is just turning into something else.
What are your memories? You said you've rightly. I actually agree with what you're saying. Some part of you does live on, but then clearly your memories. Not all of your memories are here. People don't just look at your memories, right? So that's clearly gone somewhere.
So like this is what I talk about attachment. This is what I talk about attachment, right? Your memory are your attachment to those things. So that's what I'm saying. That's what ceases to be when you die. That's what ceases to be. The only thing you'll bother to remember something is because you're attached to it one degree or another, right? I wouldn't remember an experience I've never had, right? But I remember.
But there's also experiences that you have had that you've never explained to anyone, right? What happens to those experiences?
That's why I'm saying it's all about attachments. I recall it because I am attached to it. It doesn't mean I have to talk about it. And because I don't talk about it and I die without speaking about it, the attachment is lost. Right? So the only thing that ceases to be when you die is your attachments, are your attachment to these things and experiences. Yes, and your memories are those attachments.
How about where's your emotions going?
Your emotions are also attachments, right? Love I love something because I'm attached to it. I hate something because I'm also attached. I wouldn't hate something I don't care about, right?
Okay.
I wouldn't be resentful of an experience that has nothing to do with me. So it's all attachment. Your emotions, like think about going to work and being stressed out by a class, right? You wouldn't be stressed out if you knew you'll never see those kids again. You wouldn't care.
Yep.
Yeah, that's but true. Because you know, I see these kids, I'm going to see them again next month. Oh, these silly kids, these annoying kids. You become attached to the emotions you have about that class. But if you were to leave that class and die, all those attachments, all that pain you have about that class is gone. It's gone now, right?
Yep.
And the pain are your attachments. So that's why I would allege that death is only the cessation of your attachments. But this is just me. This is just me philosophizing.
But also we talked about the physical. You have to include the physical death part too.
But which I say it's like your body being interred in the soils. Your body just becomes another thing. Your body is still here, but it's just something different now.
It changes forms for sure.
Exactly, but
the cells get broken down, but the elements that constituted your body that made the composition of your body still exists in the world. Exactly.
And now that's what I go back again to language and categorization, right? I'm having the challenges of this word, categorization. So
categorization.
There's nothing, like in nature, nothing truly ceases to be. They just evolve, they just change from one form of energy to another, right? It's something we learned like primary school science, right?
Yep. Pretty accepted fact.
Yeah. It just shifts in energy, right? And the only thing that there's only one thing, the way the Buddhists and the Hindus say, and that one thing is nature. And as human beings, we divided things up, we cut things down in nature. This is a human, this is a dog, right? Oh, this human is alive. That human was once alive, but now is dead. You know? But even if you're dead, it's just like once again I say, your memories. It's only your memories, your attachments that are gone. But your body is still here. Your body is just doing something different now. It's not walking around. It's not eating. It's not cheating. It's now just feeding the bacteria and the worms in the ground. It's feeding the soil.
Question. So why did people create the idea of an afterlife?
People create the idea of an afterlife because of the fear of death. You need something to go towards.
But we just Like, okay,
Yeah,
let's not
but
talk about the past for a minute. Let's talk about right now. Right now, we understand that you don't really, physical death isn't necessarily true death, right? You don't just disappear into nothingness. That doesn't really coincide with the reality we live in, right? We know for a fact that your body becomes something else. It's just a changing of energy. And even your memories, maybe not all of your attachments will be what you won't leave behind all of your attachments, but if you live, let's say, a generally happy life with the people around you, then you will be immortalized in some way or form.
Even if you live a bad life, Hitler has been immortalized.
That is true. Life. Even if you live a bad life, like as long as you have like, it depends on how many people you influence, I guess, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Then the point being, it's like, why you think people today will be able to accept the fact that there is no afterlife? We still debate it here and there, but it's like, do we really need an afterlife to exist as we are now?
As we are now, I guess, like I would say most people will become, okay, like not everyone, but the people who are staunchly religious, Christians, Muslims, all of these guys, if they're told there is no afterlife, I think many of them will become nihilistic, and it will be a very bad world if everyone is nihilistic.
Which doesn't really make sense, because technically, if there is no afterlife, then you'd want to live the best life you can now, because there's nothing after.
Yeah, but okay, so like, what does the best life mean, right? Because think about this: a person who is a true, what you call a good Christian, tries to be a good person and live a positive life, right? Or even a good, okay, I don't know, yeah, even a good Muslim, a good Jew, whatever you want, whatever religion, right? They believe that I have to live the best possible life, insofar as my religion believes a good life is. So I am promised I'm promised paradise after I die, right?
Yeah.
So what if that idea of like paradise is taken away? Then what do I do?
You live a proper life because this is the only life you'll ever get.
Then what will the proper life be then?
That's something.
So because think about this.
I have my answer to that. Without religion. If religion doesn't exist, then people just need to go find their own answer to that.
Okay, but now we're talking about like if this concept of the afterlife is taken away from people right now. If all your life you're told, be good, because if you are good, you will go to heaven, right? Then when you're 30, you're told it's discovered by some scientist somewhere.
Somehow. Yeah, let's just say somehow. Yeah.
Somehow it is discovered there is no heaven or hell. So, that's what happens there is cognitive dissonance. Something that you believe, you felt true for as long as you are conscious, as long as you are able to absorb information and understand concepts, is now no longer true. What do you do with that?
So you're saying that some people aren't
ready.
The idea, yeah, they're not ready. So the maybe, okay, would you say the general public is like that, or most people? What is the approximate amount of people you think are like that?
The first thing I will look into is like how many people in the world are illiterate.
Illiterate?
Yes.
Why illiterate?
Because like the more illiterate, the less literate a society, the more religious they are.
Is that like a general trend?
Yes. Like the country with the highest illiteracy rate is the most religious country in the world.
America? No, that's not America.
No, the country with the highest illiteracy rates is the most religious country in the world. I think it was DRC. I think it was DRC or something.
But then you have something like America where they're mostly Christians, and I'm pretty sure the literacy rate in America is decent.
Are they mostly Christians, or are they mostly? So here's the thing:
Christianity is number one, followed by atheism. I think atheists is either the second or third group.
Like the thing here, are they religious or do they just identify as Christians? Those are two different things, because I've been a Christian for most of my life. But I didn't go to church. When someone asks me what's your religion, I'll say, I'm a Catholic. But I didn't go to church.
But then if you do that, you'll have to question every single result that you come up with, every single, like, that's not something that's truly knowable, is what I'm trying to say. Like, if somebody says,
true,
"Hey,
true.
I'm a Christian," then it's like, would you question them? Oh, that means maybe you're not really religious, right? It's like, how do
Yeah,
you
yeah.
really know that? How do you really know that? Is there like a
Uh,
tattoo, a stamp that they get? You don't know that,
so
right?
like, I will say someone's religious if they go to church every other Sunday. Every Sunday they do their Hail Marys
I'm
as
pretty
often as
sure there's
possible.
plenty of people who do that and still do drugs and still do like some fucked up shit, right?
Yeah, I'm not saying being religious means you're a good person. And I'm not saying that, because Muslims who are religious kill people in the name of Allah, right? I'm
I'm
not
even
saying being
actually I'm
religious
even
makes you
saying
good.
that they can do all of the practices of the religion to a T
Mm,
and still
mm,
not really believe in it. To not truly like. I'm accepting what you're saying. It's like these people
mm,
might not really be religious, but we
mm.
can't take that argument because it's not truly knowable, is my argument.
Yeah, but also nothing is truly knowable, right?
That's
That's
also
why we
true.
always, yeah,
So,
that's why we
like,
always,
that's why in this case, because we're trying to figure out, like,
mm, mm.
so it was the literacy versus
Yes,
religiousness. Religiousness?
yes. Religiosity, I'm not sure. Yeah.
We have to take into account that, let's just say that, for the sake of argument, these people who say that they're Christians are fully Christians and they truly believe in whatever that they're preaching and learning.
Mm.
Um,
Yeah. But
so
why? But why?
because I'm telling you, like, it's a rabbit hole if you start debating every single person who says that they are Christian and you don't believe that they're not. Because, like I said, you'll go down this rabbit hole of like, okay, so how many days do you practice every week? And it's like we have to start drawing like these very complex lines in order to constitute what is a Christian and what isn't. And do you want to do that?
Mm-mm.
Do you want to apply that to every religion? And it's just like, it's just
Yeah, I
easier.
mean,
Let's
like,
just say it's just easier. Let's just say a person who claims he's a Christian will take his word for it. He truly believes in his religion. He truly is religious.
yeah, I wouldn't make that assumption.
Maybe we'll take away some percentage. We'll be kind. We'll take away some percentage and say these are the people who roughly don't believe, who aren't religious, despite themselves calling Christians. But I'm trying to do this because for the sake of argument.
I wouldn't make that assumption still.
Again, realistically you're right, but I'm just saying for the sake of this argument, because it'll be very complicated. It'll be like literally something we'll talk about for hours.
Yeah, but it's not like it's not like with our conversation we ever come to a conclusion, right? It's just discussion.
Well, this episode has to come to a conclusion at some point.
I mean, like, the discussion can end, but there is no conclusion to that discussion, right?
Actually,
Yeah.
we're in our final.
Yeah.
Like the next 5 minutes is probably the final. No, then you were gone for like 7 minutes. It's fine. We still have time.
I was going for 7. No, I couldn't be going for 7 minutes. Jesus.
Like 5-7 minutes. You were gone. And then going back to your point, literacy versus people who are religious, the population that's religious. What is the correlation?
Yeah, so I know that religious society, the most religious societies are also the most illiterate.
But then I brought in like there's some countries that defy that, right?
Yeah, okay, doesn't really. Okay, look at this. Let's look at this. What is it? What's the percentage of what percentage in America claims to be religious in whatever sense? What percentage? What is the percentage of religious people in America?
I would assume that the people who claim to be Christians are religious.
Yes. So what's that percentage in America?
70.
70. Okay. And what's the literacy in America?
60, 70 or so.
60. Okay. So which country has the
Is that true? Wait, let's look that up. I'm pretty sure it might be higher than that. It's probably higher than that. 86%. Yeah, that sounds
8%
right.
literacy rate
is 86%, yes.
Okay, now look at Congo literacy rate. DRC.
Religiousness, let's just put USA. And actually it's not even 70% or 65% Americans claim to be Christians. But still, we're talking about religiousness, right? So the others
Yes,
are
yes,
like
yes, yes.
Mormons.
Yeah, I'm just religion. I'm talking about religion, not like Christianity specifically.
So including like the other religions, then it's just a total of 26% of the total population has no formal religious identity.
26%?
Yeah, has no formal religious identity. So the rest do believe in a religion or are align themselves with a religion, with a specific religion. So 26%, that's around 73, 74. 74% of Americans are religious, you know. But I've given you an anomaly, right? Already. So that goes against what you said.
Wait, what did I say?
I said the countries that are most illiterate are also the most religious. And I'm like, but you have some countries like even Russia. I'm pretty sure Russia, like there's a huge amount of Christians there, right?
Of course.
And the literacy rate will be like 70 or 80% at the very least. So I'm just like, that already goes against what you're saying.
Yeah, so like, think about this, right? You've talked about America having 26% people who do not associate themselves with religion, right? So what you find is that a country that is truly religious, right, wouldn't have that high number of atheism, right? Or people not affiliate with religion.
I'm pretty. When has there ever been a country that's fully religious?
I will say many African countries are fully religious.
No,
I would say Somalia. I would say Somalia is fully religious. I would say Ethiopia is fully religious.
Okay, so you're talking about when you say fully religious, it's not fully, but like 90% and above, right?
99.
I'm pretty sure there's like 2% of Kenyans that are like atheists. But point is,
I am. Yeah, but
point is most
right?
people like 90-95%. Okay, fair enough.
So listen to this. A Gallup survey in 114 countries in 2009 shows that religion continues to play an important role in people's blah, blah, blah. The global median proportion of adults who say religion is an important part of their daily lives is 84% globally, right?
Yep.
That was in 2009, however. So religion being very important in your life. This is the survey they were doing in 114 countries, right? Number one is Bangladesh. 99% plus of people say religion is an important part of their daily life, right? What's the literacy rate in Bangladesh? What's the GDP of Bangladesh? Like, if I'm looking at just the first 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 countries. Just guess, and just, you don't have to have the exact numbers, but just imagine the economies of these countries, right? Number 1, Bangladesh. Number 2, Niger. Number 3, Yemen. Indonesia, Malawi, Sri Lanka, Somaliland, Djibouti, Mauritania, Burundi. How do you think these countries are doing economically? And
they're all third world countries.
Yeah?
They're all third world countries.
Exactly. All of them are 99% plus. Insofar as the question is religion an important part of your daily life? Right?
Yeah.
So if we go down to America, so countries where religion is an important part of your daily life. Number 1, Estonia, 16%. Religion is still is an important part of your daily life. Only 16% of Estonians say that religion is an important part of their daily life. Number 2 is Sweden, then Denmark, then Japan, then Hong Kong, then UK, then Vietnam. I'm surprised to find it there. Then France, Russia, Belarus.
Also, we have to end it soon, but yeah, we'll end it with this. Continue.
So, like, you can see, like, religiosity in a country affects, number 1, your economy, affects your literacy rates. I don't think it affects, but maybe I'm not sure if it's correlation of causation. I'm not really sure. Maybe it's just correlation.
There's definitely a correlation. I give you that.
Yes, because it's all the third world countries that have these high rates of religiosity, and all the wealthy countries seem to have close to none. Not none, but close to none. Very low numbers. It does say something about this, right? There is something to be said.
I didn't necessarily, when I started this argument, I didn't necessarily agree or disagree with you. I'm just trying to say that we can't assume anything. So if you're gonna say like, oh, A and B are like very linked together, then we have to follow that to its final conclusion. So that's what I wanted to see. But realistically, from our own experiences and what we saw back at home, we can understand why countries that are poorer economically have this inclination, like the public in those poorer countries have this inclination to move towards religion.
Yeah, that makes sense.
It's because they don't have anything else, right? So when you have this like deity or figure that could potentially gift you a better life, right? It's like, why not take a chance and believe in that, right? Because
so what was the question that led to this discussion? Well, I don't even remember.
So the original question was about would the public and the common people be able to accept the idea of not having an afterlife?
Yeah, so I would say in all of these countries where there is poverty, I would say no.
And actually, well, thinking about it more, it's like I do agree. I do think like there is a large amount of people that aren't, let's just say, ripe for the idea isn't ripe enough for them.
It's not a good idea. Just let people be people. Let them have. We should all have our religions. We should all be as religious.
What do you tell the fishermen in Somalia that have had the waters, the seas being commercially robbed from them, right? By the bigger international, like, big ships that fish there, and they can't feed their families, they can't make any money, and what do you tell them? That there's no heaven, there's no afterlife? It's
just this daily shit, fucking shit every day. This is all you have.
This is all you have. Then they will truly go crazy, right?
Yeah.
They're already losing it as it is, Religion is probably like holding them back to some extent.
That's why I say you cannot take away the concept of the afterlife from people. It's wrong. I would say it's morally wrong to take it away from them. It's morally wrong to take it away.
Morally wrong. Okay.
Yes.
We'll attack that in another episode. So, any final thoughts?
No final thoughts. Nothing to say. Just we have one more week to talk about spirituality and religion. Then we'll move on to our next topic that we are yet to discuss. We'll come up with.
Actually, we have 2 more weeks, I think.
No, it's just next week.
When does this month end? Okay, we'll look at that later.
Well, the 17th. It's just next week.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Take care, man. Take care.
Wait, what? You need to say bye to our listeners, Oscar.
Oh, jeez. I totally forgot I was doing a podcast. I don't know, just having a call.
Have you forgotten?
Man, habits. Poor habits. Anyway, listeners, we appreciate you listening. We appreciate all the comments and the requests for topics and discussions to be had. To Nails, Nathan, we appreciate you listening and giving us a suggestion to start up.
We're having shout-outs now. We have shout-outs now. Nice.
Yeah, he's the guy who gave us the session of light versus darkness, so we have to give him a shout.
Good stuff, Nathan. Good stuff.
Yeah, so thank you so much. We will come up with more discussions, and we look forward to come up with a theme for next month, for the month of April. Spring, Jason, spring. Cherry blossoms. Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. And bye-bye. Bye-bye, Oscar.
Thank you. Bye-bye.